The massive starship drifted through the cold darkness of space like a metal mountain. Its hull stretched for miles, covered in weapons that could destroy entire planets. Inside the ship, Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge looking at the stars. Through a huge window, he had been ruling space battles for over 200 years, and in all that time, no enemy had ever beaten him. The Zelkari Empire controlled 17 star systems. They had the biggest ships, the strongest weapons, and the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Every species they met either joined them willingly or got destroyed. There was never a third choice. Admiral called Commander Yihilin from his station. Our deep space sensors have found something interesting. Vextar turned around slowly. His tall, thin body moved with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. His purple skin gleamed under the bridge lights, and his forearms gestured as he spoke. "What have you discovered, Commander? It's a small planet in the outer rim?" "Sir, the third planet from a yellow star. Our computers show it has intelligent life." Vextar walked over to look at the data on the main screen. The planet was mostly blue and green, with white clouds swirling around it. It looked peaceful and quiet. "What do we know about the inhabitants? They call themselves humans, sir? They appear to be very primitive. Our sensors detect electromagnetic radiation coming from their world. Radio waves, television signals, basic communication methods. Their technology seems to be hundreds of years behind ours." The Admiral laughed, a sound like metal scraping against stone. "How amusing. They are still using radio waves. My people abandoned such crude methods over 3,000 years ago." "Yes, sir." "Our analysis shows they have only just begun to explore their own solar system. They have a few small space stations and some basic satellites. No weapons that we can detect, no shields, no faster-than-light travel. They appear completely defenseless." Vextar studied the planet more carefully. Had in mind, the Zelkari Empire needed new worlds to expand into. And this little planet would make an excellent example for other species to see. When word spread about how icily the humans were crushed, other worlds would surrender without a fight. "How long since we last made an example of a defiant species?" Vextar asked. "The Corinthians, sir? That was 57 solar cycles ago?" "Yes, the Corinthians. They thought their underground cities would protect them. They were wrong." Vextar smiled coldly. The memory of that conquest still brought him pleasure. The Corinthians had been a proud species with strong military traditions. They had refused to surrender and tried to fight back. The Zelkari had reduced their entire world to radioactive ash in less than a day. "Sir, should we begin standard conquest procedures?" Hillen asked. "Not yet, Commander. First, let us see if these humans have any sense of self-preservation. Send them our standard ultimatum. Give them 7 solar cycles to surrender completely, or we will destroy their world." "Yes, sir." "Should we include the footage from previous conquests?" "Definitely. Show them what happened to the Corinthians. Show them the burning cities of Theta Prime. Show them the asteroid field that used to be the Andrillian homeworld. Let them understand exactly what they face if they choose." To resist, Yahilin worked at his control panel for several minutes, preparing the transmission. The ultimatum was always the same: complete surrender of all military forces, immediate submission to Zelkari authority, relocation of the population to designated work colonies, and total exploitation of the planet's resources. It was not a negotiation. It was a demand. Message: prepared, Admiral. Broadcasting now across all human communication frequencies. The transmission went out into space, carrying the Zelkari ultimatum toward the small blue planet. Vextar expected one of two responses. Either the humans would immediately surrender, begging for mercy and offering to serve the Empire, or they would remain silent in terror, hoping somehow that the Zelkari would ignore them. No species had ever chosen a third option. The bridge became quiet as they waited. Most alien species responded within hours of receiving the ultimatum. The smart ones surrendered immediately. The foolish ones sometimes took a few days to argue among themselves, before finally accepting the inevitable. "Admiral," said Yahilin after 2 days had passed, "we are receiving a response from the human world. Excellent. display their surrender terms. But what appeared on the screen was not a surrender. It was the face of a human male, wearing what appeared to be a military uniform. Skin was tan, his hair was short and gray, and his eyes were the cold blue color of deep space. He looked directly into the camera with no sign of fear. "To the Zelkari Empire," the human said in a calm, steady voice. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the United Earth Defense Force. We have received your ultimatum and reviewed your demands." Vexstar leaned forward, surprised by the human's composure. Most species were trembling with terror by this point in the conversation. "We have also examined the footage you provided of your previous conquests," Morrison continued. "We found it quite educational. However, after careful consideration, Earth's response is as follows. We decline your demands. We will not surrender our world, our people, or our freedom to your empire." The Zelkari bridge fell completely silent. No one had ever simply said no to their demands. It was unthinkable. Morrison was not finished. "Furthermore, we consider your ultimatum to be an act of aggression against a sovereign world. Earth stands ready to defend itself against any hostile action. We strongly advise you to reconsider your position before you take actions that you cannot undo." Vexstar's 4 hands clenched into fists. His purple skin darkened with rage. How dare this primitive creature speak to the Zelkari Empire with such disrespect? "This is our final communication on this matter," Morrison concluded. "Choose wisely." "Admiral, this is your only warning." The transmission ended, leaving the Zelkari bridge in stunned silence. "Did he just threaten us?" Yehilin whispered. "It appears he did," Vexstar replied, his voice deadly quiet. "This human insect thinks he can challenge the might of the Zelkari Empire. He believes his primitive world can stand against our fleets." The Admiral walked to the center of the bridge, his rage building with each step. In 3,000 years of galactic conquest, no species had ever responded to Zelkari demands with such casual defiance. The humans had not just refused to surrender. They had threatened retaliation. "Commander, send word to High Command. Request immediate deployment of the 3rd Fleet, full battle configuration." "Sir, the 3rd Fleet? For one primitive planet? Surely a single battleship would be sufficient." "No," Vexstar snarled. "We will make such an example of this world that every species in the galaxy will remember it for 1,000 generations. The humans think they can threaten us. They will learn the price of defying the Zelkari Empire." "How many ships shall we bring, Admiral?" "All of them. Every ship in the 3rd Fleet, 47 vessels, including 2 Devastator-class battleships. We will turn their entire solar system into a monument to Zelkari power." "Yes, sir." "The fleet will be ready to depart in 6 solar cycles." Vexstar stared at the screen where the human's face had been. Admiral Jake Morrison. He would remember that name when he stood over the ashes of Earth and broadcast the footage of humanity's destruction to every world in the galaxy. The humans had made a choice that would doom their entire species. They had chosen war with the Zelkari Empire. It would be the last choice they ever made. "Set course for the human solar system," Vexstar commanded, "and prepare the orbital bombardment systems. When we finish with Earth, there will not be enough left to fill a cargo container." 3,000 miles beneath the surface of Earth, deep inside a mountain in Colorado, General Lisa Martinez walked through corridors that did not exist on any public map. The walls were made of the strongest metals humanity could create. The air hummed with the power of massive computers and energy systems. This was the heart of Project Prometheus, the most secret military program in human history. Martinez had been running this facility for 12 years. She was a short woman with dark hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her uniform bore no markings that would identify her rank to outsiders. In the world above, she was just another government worker. Down here, she commanded the most powerful military force humanity had ever built. The command center was a huge room. It's filled with holographic displays and control stations. Dozens of technicians worked at their posts, monitoring systems that reached across the solar system and beyond. On the main screen, Earth looked peaceful and blue, but the display showed much more than what alien sensors could detect. "Status report," Martinez called out as she entered the room. Captain Ben Rodriguez turned from his station. He was a tall man with steady hands and a calm voice. For 5 years, he had been tracking alien movements in nearby star systems. His face showed both excitement and concern. The Zelkari took the bait, General. Our deep space monitoring stations detected their scout ships 3 days ago. They spent considerable time scanning our radio and television broadcasts, just as we expected. Martinez nodded. The radio and television signals were all part of the plan. For 40 years, Earth had been broadcasting carefully selected transmissions into space. Old shows, primitive technology, demonstrations, and basic communication signals. To any alien civilization monitoring Earth, humans would appear to be a young species just beginning to explore space. The truth was very different. What about their response to our ultimatum rejection? Martinez asked. Admiral Morrison's performance was perfect, Rodriguez replied with a small smile. The Zelkari are mobilizing their third fleet, 47 ships, including their most powerful battleships. They're planning to make an example of us. Good. The bigger the fleet they send, the more impressive our victory will be. Martinez walked to the tactical display showing the solar system. 2 alien eyes, it looked almost empty. A few space stations, some mining operations on asteroids, basic satellites around Earth, but Martinez could see the real picture. Dr. Amy Chen approached from the weapons control station. She was a small woman with gray hair and brilliant mind that had designed most of Earth's secret defenses. General, all defensive systems are operating at full capacity. The orbital weapons platforms are charged and ready. The asteroid bases have armed their missile systems. Luna Base reports that all ships are prepared for launch. Martinez studied the display more carefully. Communication satellites orbiting. Earth were actually powerful particle beam weapons, each one capable of destroying a large warship. The mining operations on asteroids throughout the solar system were heavily fortified. Military bases with long-range missile systems. The research stations near Jupiter and Saturn were advanced sensor networks that could track enemy ships from the edge of the solar system, and hidden on the far side of the moon was humanity's greatest secret, Luna Base, or Earth's space. Fleet waited in the shadows. Dr. Chen, remind me how this all started, Martinez said, though she knew the story well. Sometimes it helped to remember why they had built all of this. Chen walked to another display showing images from deep space. 15 years ago, our long-range telescopes detected the destruction of the Corinthian homeworld. We watched the Zelkari Empire reduce an entire planet to radioactive debris in less than 24 hours. The images were ... disturbing.
Oh.
Display showed footage that still gave Martinez nightmares. Cities burning from orbit. Entire continents turned to glass by alien weapons. Millions of people dying in moments. The Corinthians had been a peaceful species with a rich culture and advanced technology. None of it had mattered when the Zelkari decided to make an example of them. That's when the Global Defense Council was formed, Chen continued. Every nation on Earth contributed resources and personnel. We decided that if aliens ever came to our world, we would be ready. And we've been preparing ever since, added Lieutenant Frank Hayes from the communications station. He was young but brilliant, one of the best tactical analysts Earth had ever produced. We studied every piece of data we could gather about the Zelkari Empire. Their ship designs, their weapons, their tactics, their weaknesses. Martinez remembered those early years. The secret construction projects, the development of new technologies, the training of personnel who officially didn't exist. Entire cities had been built underground to support the project. Thousands of the brightest minds on Earth had dedicated their lives to preparing for this day. Lieutenant Hayes, what's our current assessment of Zelkari capabilities? Martinez asked. Hayes pulled up detailed technical specifications on his screen. Their ships are large and heavily armed, but they rely on outdated shield technology. Their weapons are powerful, but slow to target fast-moving objects. Most importantly, they've grown overconfident after centuries of easy victories. They don't expect real resistance and our advantages. Our ships are smaller, but much faster and more maneuverable. Our weapons are specifically designed to penetrate Zelkar's shields. Our targeting systems are more advanced than anything they've encountered, and we have the element of surprise. Rodriguez pointed to another display showing ship movements near the edge of the solar system. General, our scout ships report that the Zelkari fleet has entered the outer system. They're moving slowly, probably expecting to find a defenseless world. Martinez felt a cold satisfaction. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Zelkari thought they were approaching easy prey. Instead, they were flying into the most sophisticated trap in galactic history. Captain Rodriguez, begin Phase 1 of Operation Thunderstrike. Activate all stealth systems and move our ships into attack positions. Yes, ma'am. All units, this is command. Operation Thunderstrike is now active. Repeat, Thunderstrike is active. Across the solar system, Earth's hidden defenses came to life. The disguised orbital weapons platforms powered up their main guns. The asteroid bases opened hidden launch bays and armed their missiles. On Luna Base, Admiral Morrison himself prepared to lead the space fleet into battle. The main screen showed Admiral Morrison on the bridge of the UES Retribution, humanity's most advanced warship. He was the same man who had delivered the defiant message to the Zelkari. But now he wore full combat gear, and his expression was grim with determination. General Martinez Morrison said over the communication link, "The fleet is ready to launch on your command. 12 Retribution-class dreadnoughts, 36 Valkyrie-class cruisers, and 72 Falcon-class fighters. All ships are armed with quantum torpedoes and equipped with adaptive shielding." Excellent, Admiral. Remember, we want to disable as many of their ships as possible. We need some survivors to carry word back to the Zelkari Empire about what happened here. Understood, General? We'll give them a demonstration they won't forget. Dr. Chen approached with a final systems report. All defensive grids are online and synchronized. Our targeting computers have identified every ship in the Zelkari fleet and assigned optimal attack vectors. The particle beam satellites can begin firing the moment they enter effective range. Martinez looked around the command center at the faces of her people.
Ow.
These men and women had spent years preparing for this moment. They had sacrificed normal lives, worked in secret, and dedicated themselves to protecting humanity from alien threats. Today, their sacrifice would be tested. "People," she said, her voice carrying to every station in the room. "For 15 years we've been preparing for this day. We've built the most advanced military force in human history. We've studied our enemy and learned their weaknesses. We've turned our solar system into a fortress that no alien empire can break." She paused, looking at each of them. It's the Zelkari. Empire thinks they're approaching a primitive world filled with helpless victims. They're about to learn that humans don't make good victims. Today we show the galaxy that Earth can defend itself. Today we change the balance of power in space. Forever. The room filled with quiet determination as everyone returned to their stations. Martinez walked to the main tactical display and watched the approaching alien fleet. Soon, very soon, the Zelkari would discover that their days of easy conquest were over. "All stations report ready," General Rodriguez announced. "Then let's give our visitors a proper welcome," Martinez replied. "Begin the attack." Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the eternal dominance, watching the small blue planet grow larger on his screen. The massive battleship was 5 miles long and carried enough weapons to destroy a dozen worlds. Around it, 46 other Zelkari ships moved in perfect formation through space. "How much longer until we reach attack range?" Vextar asked. 2 hours, Admiral," replied Commander Yihilin. "Our sensors show the planet exactly as expected. Minimal defenses, no sign of military preparation." Vextar smiled with cold satisfaction. The humans had chosen to resist the Zelkari Empire, and now they would pay the ultimate price. Their world would become another example of what happened to species that dared to defy Zelkari authority. "What exactly are our sensors detecting?" Vextar wanted to be thorough. Sometimes primitive worlds had surprises. "A few orbital structures that appear to be communication satellites, sir. Some basic space stations for scientific research. Industrial facilities on their moon, probably. Mining operations. No weapons that we can identify, no shields, no military vessels, and their technology level, extremely primitive, Admiral. They are still using chemical rockets to reach orbit. Their computers are basic electronic devices. Their weapons appear to be simple projectile systems and crude explosives. They pose no threat to our forces. Vextar nodded. It was exactly what he had expected. The humans had sent their defiant message, but they had no way to back up their words with action. Their bravery would make their destruction even more satisfying. Prepare the bombardment sequence, Vextar ordered. Target their major population centers first. I want them to see their cities burning before we finish them completely. Yes, sir. All ships report weapons charged and ready. Zelkari fleet moved closer to Earth, their massive ships casting shadows across space. Each vessel bristled with particle cannons, plasma torpedoes, and graviton bombs. The combined firepower could crack a planet's crust and boil away its oceans. But as they approached the inner system, something unexpected began to happen. The first sign of trouble came from the sensor station. Admiral, I'm detecting some unusual energy readings from those orbital satellites. What kind of readings? High energy buildup, sir. Much higher than communication equipment should produce. Before Vextar could respond, the trap that humanity had spent 15 years preparing finally revealed itself. The innocent-looking satellites around Earth suddenly changed. Metal panels slid away to reveal massive weapon barrels. Targeting systems that had been hidden now locked onto the Zelkari ships with deadly precision. What the aliens had mistaken for primitive communication devices were actually the most advanced particle beam weapons humanity had ever built. What is happening? Vextar roared as alarms began blaring throughout his ship. Admiral, those satellites are weapons platforms. They're targeting our ships. But that was only the beginning. The space stations that appeared to be for scientific research suddenly shed their disguises. Hidden missile bays opened. Defensive shields powered up. Advanced sensors began tracking every Zelkari vessel. And then, from the shadow of the moon, where no sensors had detected them, came humanity's secret fleet. 12 sleek dreadnoughts emerged from concealment, their hulls gleaming with advanced armor and their weapons already charged for battle. Behind them came 36 smaller cruisers, moving with a speed and grace that shocked the alien invaders. Above and below the main fleet, 72 fighters spread out in attack formation. Admiral Morrison's voice suddenly filled every Zelkari. Communication channel. Welcome to Earth, Admiral Vextar. We've been expecting you. Vextar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Where moments before his sensors had shown a defenseless world, now he saw a sophisticated military force. That rivaled the Zelkari fleet in numbers and appeared to surpass it in technology. How is this possible? He whispered. Allow me to introduce you to humanity's gift to the galaxy, Morrison continued, his voice calm and professional. The concept of a fair fight, first attack came without warning, Earth's orbital defense. Platforms fired simultaneously, their particle beams lancing across space with impossible accuracy. 3 Zelkari cruisers were hit before they could even raise their shields. The aliens watched in horror as their supposedly superior defensive systems collapsed under the focused assault. Return fire? Vextar screamed. All ships return fire. Immediately. The Zelkari weapons opened up, sending streams of plasma and particle beams toward the human positions. But the Earth ships moved like dancers, twisting and turning through space with an agility that seemed impossible for vessels of their size. Most of the alien shots missed completely. How are they moving so fast? Commander Helon shouted over. The sound of explosions. The terrible truth was becoming clear to Vextar. The humans had not just been hiding their military capabilities. They had been studying Zelkari technology for years, learning every weakness, every flaw in their ship designs. Earth's weapons were specifically designed to penetrate Zelkari shields. Their targeting systems could predict Zelkari movements. Their ships were built to exploit every tactical disadvantage the aliens had. Captain Linda Torres led her fighter squadron in a devastating attack on the Zelkari right flank. Her ship, the Valkyrie, danced between enemy fire while her quantum torpedoes found gaps in alien armor that should have been impossible to hit. "This is Valkyrie, leader to all Earth forces," she broadcast. "Enemy shields are weaker than expected. Concentrate fire on their weapon systems." The human fighters swarmed around the massive Zelkari ships like angry insects. Too small and fast for the aliens' heavy weapons to track effectively, their missiles and energy beams struck with surgical precision, disabling gun turrets and sensor arrays. On the bridge of the UES Retribution, Admiral Morrison coordinated the battle with calm efficiency. All dreadnoughts focus fire on the enemy flagship. Cruiser squadrons take out their escort vessels. Fighter wings disable as many ships as possible. We want survivors to carry our message back to their empire. The quantum torpedoes launched by the human ships were unlike anything the Zelkari had encountered. They phased through normal matter until they reached their target, then exploded with devastating force from inside the enemy hulls. Zelkari ships that had seemed invincible moments before began listing and exploding. "Admiral, we're losing ships." "Too quickly," Yehilin reported in panic. "The humans have destroyed 18 of our vessels and crippled 12 more." Vexstar looked at his tactical display and felt something he had never experienced before: fear. His mighty Third Fleet, the same force that had conquered 6 worlds in the past decade, was being systematically destroyed by what he had assumed was a primitive species. "Sir, the human admiral is hailing us directly," the communications officer reported. Morrison's face appeared on the main screen. There was no triumph or gloating in his expression, only cold, professional determination. "Admiral Vexstar, you came to our system expecting to find victims. Instead, you found soldiers." "This is impossible," Vexstar snarled. "Your technology is primitive. Our intelligence reports showed no advanced military capabilities." "Your intelligence was exactly what we wanted you to see," Morrison replied calmly. "We've been broadcasting carefully selected signals into space for 40 years, Admiral. Radio shows, primitive technology, demonstrations, basic communications. We wanted any hostile aliens to underestimate us." Another wave of human fighters swept past the main screen, their weapons tearing through the hull of a Zelkari destroyer. The massive alien ship broke apart in a shower of metal and flame. "Why?" Vexstar asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why did you prepare for this?" "Because 15 years ago, we watched you destroy the Corinthian homeworld," Morrison answered. "We saw what your empire does to peaceful civilizations. We decided that if you ever came to Earth, we would be ready." The battle was turning into a complete disaster for the Zelkari. Of their original 47 ships, only 15 remained operational, and those were badly damaged. The human fleet had suffered minimal casualties while inflicting devastating losses on the aliens. "Admiral," Yehilin said quietly, "we should consider retreat. If we stay here, we'll lose everything." Vexstar stared at the tactical display, watching his proud fleet being picked apart by human weapons. For 3,000 years, the Zelkari Empire had been the dominant force in the galaxy. No species had ever successfully resisted their conquest. Now, in the space of a few hours, that dominance had been shattered by a single world. "Signal general retreat," he ordered, his voice hollow with defeat. "All remaining ships fall back to the edge of the system." But Morrison wasn't finished with them yet. "Admiral Vexstar, your remaining ships are free to leave. However, I want you to understand something very clearly. Any Zelkari vessel that approaches Earth space again will be destroyed without warning. Consider this your education in human military doctrine." As the battered remains of the Zelkari fleet limped away from Earth, Vexstar realized that everything had changed. The galaxy would never be the same again. 3 days after the battle at Earth, Admiral Vexstar sat in his damaged command chair aboard the Eternal Dominance. The great battleship was barely functional. Its hull was cracked in 17 places, half its weapons were destroyed, and its engines could only manage half speed. Around him, the bridge crew worked frantically to keep their ship running. Of the 47 ships that had entered the human solar system, only 12 had escaped. The others were either destroyed completely or too damaged to make the journey home. It was the worst military disaster in Zelkari history. "Status report," Vexstar said quietly. Commander Yehilin looked up from his damaged console. We're receiving emergency signals from our outer colonies, Admiral. 3 of our border worlds are under attack by human fleets. Vexstar felt his blood turn cold. What did you say? The colonies at Kepler 442, Ros 128, and Wolf 359 are all reporting human warships approaching their systems. The attacks appear to be coordinated, sir. The Admiral stared at the tactical display, showing the positions of Zelkari territory. The 3 colonies under attack were spread across hundreds of light years. For the humans to strike all of them simultaneously meant they had multiple fleets, advanced faster than light travel, and detailed knowledge of Zelkari positions. How is this possible? Vexter whispered. Earth was supposed to be their only world. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command, the communications officer reported. Admiral Morrison's face appeared on the screen again. This time, he was speaking from what appeared to be a war room deep underground. Behind him, holographic displays showed star charts and fleet positions. Admiral Vexstar Morrison began. I trust you're beginning to understand the scope of your miscalculation. You said Earth stands ready to defend itself, Vexstar replied weakly. You never mentioned other worlds. Morrison's expression remained calm and professional. You assumed Earth was humanity's only world, Admiral. That was your mistake. We've been expanding through the galaxy for over 40 years. Right now, human fleets are moving toward your outer colonies. The screen switched to show footage from the battle at Kepler 442. Captain Steve Wilson commanded the UES Phoenix as it led a task force of 20 human ships against the Zelkari mining colony. The aliens watched in horror as their defensive platforms were systematically destroyed by weapons they didn't understand. The colony at Kepler 442 has surrendered, Morrison continued. Captain Wilson reports that the enslaved population has been liberated and is receiving humanitarian aid. The Zelkari garrison chose to surrender rather than fight. More footage appeared, this time from Ros 128. Commander Patricia Lee led her squadron in a lightning assault on the Zelkari military base there. The human ships moved through the alien defenses like ghosts, appearing suddenly to strike and then vanishing before the enemy could respond. Ros 128 fell 4 hours ago, Morrison reported. The Zelkari defenders were given the choice to surrender or be destroyed. Most chose surrender. The final footage showed the attack on Wolf 359. Captain Danny Roberts coordinated a massive assault, involving 30 human vessels against the largest Zelkari stronghold in that sector. The space battle was brief but decisive, with the aliens outmatched in every category. Wolf 359 is now under human control, Morrison concluded. Admiral, in the past 72 hours, humanity has liberated 3 worlds and freed over 2 million enslaved people. This is just the beginning. Vexstar struggled to process what he was hearing. The Zelkari Empire controlled 17 star systems with hundreds of colonies and outposts. The idea that humans could threaten their entire civilization seemed impossible. What do you want? He asked finally. We want the Zelkari Empire to understand a new reality, Morrison replied. Your days of easy conquest are over. Every world you attack from now on might have human allies. Every fleet you send out might face human weapons. Every act of aggression might bring human retaliation. The screen changed to show a star map of the local galaxy. Red dots marked Zelkari territories, while blue dots showed human colonies and allied worlds. Vexstar was shocked to see how extensive the human presence had become. We know about your other campaigns, Admiral. The Vorthaka Gemini and the Andromeda Spiral. It's a Krillian syndicate near the Galactic core. The Nexus Collective in the Outer Rim. You're not the only aggressive empire in the galaxy, and Earth is prepared to deal with all of you. Morrison leaned forward slightly. Here's what's going to happen, Admiral. You're going to take your surviving ships back to your capital world. You're going to tell your leaders exactly what happened here. You're going to explain that humanity is now a major power in this galaxy, that we will not tolerate the enslavement and destruction of peaceful worlds. And if we refuse, Vexstar asked, though he already knew his position was hopeless, then we'll keep liberating your colonies until there's nothing left of your empire but your homeworld. And if you force our hand, we'll come for that too. The transmission ended, leaving the Zelkari bridge in stunned silence. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Martinez stood in the command center watching reports from across the galaxy. The 3 simultaneous attacks had gone perfectly. Human forces had captured important Zelkari facilities, freed enslaved populations, and demonstrated that Earth's military reach extended far beyond their home system. General, reported Major Kate Foster from her station. We're receiving surrender requests from 17 former Zelkari tributary worlds. They want Earth's protection in exchange for joining our defensive alliance. Martinez nodded grimly. This was exactly what she had hoped would happen. The rapid success of human forces would encourage other worlds to break free from Zelkari control. But it also meant that Earth was about to become responsible for the defense of dozens of alien civilizations. What's the status of our colonial fleets? She asked. Captain Rodriguez pulled up a galaxy-wide tactical display. Admiral Morrison commands the sole defense fleet protecting Earth. Admiral Patricia Barnes leads the Centauri fleet with bases at Alpha Centauri and Proxima. Admiral Kevin Torres has the Vega fleet stationed near Vega and Altair. Admiral Sarah Wilson commands the Arcturus fleet in the northern sectors. And our newest additions? The Liberated Worlds fleet is forming under Admiral Danny Roberts' ships. And personnel from the worlds we just freed from Zelkari control. They're eager to fight back against their former oppressors. Martinez studied the display carefully. In 40 years, humanity had gone from a single world to an interstellar civilization, with colonies across dozens of star systems, but they had kept their expansion secret, allowing other species to believe that Earth was alone and vulnerable. General Foster continued. We're also receiving intelligence reports about the other hostile empires Admiral Morrison mentioned. The Vorthok hegemony has been expanding toward our outer colonies. The Krillian Syndicate is enslaving worlds near the galactic core. The Nexus Collective appears to be preparing for a major offensive. Any immediate threats? Long-range sensors detect a Vorthok scouting force approaching the Tau Ceti system. They appear to be testing our defenses. Martinez smiled coldly. Then let's give them the same lesson we gave the Zelkari. Alert Admiral Torres. Tell him to prepare for Operation Thunderbolt. Yes, ma'am. Should we use the same tactics? Absolutely. Let them think Tau Ceti is a lightly defended human colony. When they attack, hit them with everything we have. Word. We'll spread that humanity doesn't make easy targets. Across the galaxy, the balance of power was shifting. For thousands of years, aggressive empires like the Zelkari had preyed on weaker species with impunity. Now, for the first time, there was a force strong enough to challenge them in the depths of space. Admiral Vexstar continued his journey home, carrying news that would shake the Zelkari Empire to its foundations. Behind him, human fleets were already moving toward new targets. Ready to liberate more worlds and demonstrate that the age of easy conquest was over, the galaxy would never be the same again. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Earth, and the galaxy looked completely different. Admiral Morrison stood on the observation deck of the UES Liberator, humanity's newest and most powerful flagship. Through the massive windows he could see the former Zelkari capital world of Zeltar spinning slowly in space. The planet was no longer the center of a mighty empire. The purple and silver cities that had once housed the rulers of 17 star systems now flew human flags alongside the banners of dozens of liberated worlds. The change had been swift and largely peaceful, as most Zelkari civilians had welcomed the end of their government's aggressive policies. Admiral, said Commander Rachel Brown as she approached with her daily report. The integration process is going better than expected. Morrison turned from the window. Brown was one of his most trusted officers, a sharp woman with years of experience. In diplomatic and military affairs, she had been working with the former Zelkari territories for months, helping them transition to the new galactic order. What's the current status? Morrison asked. Crime on Zeltar is down 60% since we took control, Brown reported. Industrial production has increased by 40%. The former slave populations are adapting well to freedom, and we've established working relationships with most of the surviving Zelkari leadership. Morrison nodded with satisfaction. Taking over former enemy territory was always challenging, but humanity had approached it differently than most conquerors. Instead of ruling through fear, they had offered partnership and protection. Movements, few small groups in the outer colonies, but nothing serious. Most Zelkari civilians seem relieved that the constant warfare has ended. They're tired of being feared throughout the galaxy. Morrison understood that feeling. The Zelkari Empire had been built on conquest and intimidation. When that foundation collapsed, many of its people had discovered they preferred peace. What about the other liberated worlds? Brown smiled. 31 former Zelkari territories have joined the Terran Alliance voluntarily. They're contributing ships, resources, and personnel to our mutual defense agreements. The Corinthian survivors are especially enthusiastic about joining our cause. The Corinthians were a special case. 15 years ago, the Zelkari had destroyed their homeworld. But scattered populations had survived on colony worlds and space stations. When human forces liberated those survivors, they had been eager to help fight back against their former oppressors. They've provided us with detailed intelligence about 3 other hostile empires, Brown continued. The Vorthok Hegemony, the Krillian Syndicate, and the Nexus Collective. All of them are planning to test our strength. On the bridge of the exploration vessel, U.S. Pathfinder, Captain Greg Martinez reviewed reports from humanity's rapidly expanding sphere of influence. Greg was General Martinez's younger brother, and he had inherited the family talent for military strategy. His ship was currently patrolling the border between human space and the territory of the Vorthok Hegemony. Captain reported Lieutenant Nancy Adams from the communications station. We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. General Martinez's face appeared on the main screen. Even across the vast distance of space, Greg could see the weight of command in his sister's eyes. Leading a galactic alliance was proving to be more complex than defending a single world. Greg, we need the Pathfinder to investigate reports of Vorthok aggression in the Rigel sector, she said. Intelligence suggests they're planning to attack our outer colonies. Greg studied the star charts on his tactical display. The Vorthok Hegemony controlled 12 star systems and had a reputation for being even more brutal than the Zelkari. They enslaved entire populations and used them as living weapons in their conquests. What's our current assessment of Vorthok? Capabilities? Greg asked. They have a larger fleet than the Zelkari did, but their technology is older. More importantly, they've been watching what happened to the Zelkari Empire. They know we're not the primitive species we appeared to be. Are they planning a direct assault on Earth? No, they're smarter than that. Our intelligence indicates they're going to probe our defenses, test our response times, and look for weaknesses. They want to understand exactly what they're facing. Before they commit to a major attack, Greg nodded. It was a sound strategy from the Vorthok perspective, but humanity had been preparing for exactly this kind of challenge. Understood, Command. The Pathfinder is changing course for the Rigel sector. We'll give them something to think about. Meanwhile, deep in space, near the edge of former Zelkari territory, Admiral Vextar sat in a small cabin aboard a civilian transport ship. He was no longer an admiral. The Zelkari High Command had stripped him of his rank and authority after the disaster at Earth, but the humans had been surprisingly merciful too, defeated enemies who cooperated with the new order. The transport was carrying him and other former Zelkari military personnel to one of the remaining independent Zelkari worlds. It was a small planet with a peaceful population that had never supported the empires. Aggressive policies. Through his porthole, Vextar could see one of the massive human Liberator-class ships escorting their transport. The vessel was beautiful. In its deadly efficiency, with sleek lines and obvious power, it served as a constant reminder of how completely the galaxy's balance of power had shifted. A young Zelkari civilian approached his table in the transport's common area. She was barely an adult, with the bright purple skin and curious eyes of her species' youth. Admiral Vextar, she said hesitantly, may I ask you something? Vextar looked at her for a long moment. I am no longer an admiral, child. But yes, you may ask. What will happen to us now? The humans in control, it was a question that Vextar had been asking himself for months. The answer was complex and still uncertain. We will adapt, he said finally. We'll learn to live in this new galaxy that the humans are building. And perhaps, if we prove ourselves worthy, we will find a place in it. Are the humans going to treat us the way we treated other species? Vexstar shook his head. No, child. That is the most remarkable thing about them. They could have destroyed our worlds and enslaved our people, just as we did to others. Instead, they offer us partnership and protection. He paused, staring out at the vast expanse of space that was no longer under Zelkari control. The humans taught us something important, he continued. They showed us that true strength doesn't come from conquest and fear. It comes from the willingness to stand up and defend what you believe in. We spent 3,000 years being the threat in the darkness. Now we must learn to be something better. The young Zelkari considered his words carefully. You think we can do that? Change, I mean? I believe we must try. The alternative is to become extinct, either through our own violence or through the justified anger of those we have wronged. Back on Earth, in the deep command center beneath the Colorado Mountains, General Martinez stood before a massive holographic display showing the entire galaxy. Blue dots marked human colonies and allied worlds. Red dots showed the remaining hostile empires. Yellow dots indicated neutral civilizations that were still deciding which side to support. Status report on the Galactic Defense Initiative, she said to her assembled staff. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. We now have formal defense agreements with 43 worlds, General. Our combined fleet strength is over 300 ships, with more being built every month. Shipyards at Luna Base, Alpha Centauri, and New Corinthos are operating at full capacity. What about the hostile empires? The Vorthok hegemony is mobilizing for what appears to be a major offensive. The Krillian Syndicate is consolidating their forces near the galactic core. The Nexus Collective remains quiet, but our intelligence suggests they're planning something significant. Martinez studied the display carefully. Humanity had never wanted to become a galactic power, but circumstances had forced that role upon them. The collapse of Zelkari authority had created a vacuum that needed to be filled, and no one else seemed capable of standing up to the remaining threats. General, said Major Foster from her station, we're receiving a diplomatic request from the Andromedan Council. They want to discuss a mutual defense treaty. Martinez smiled slightly. The Andromedan Council represented over 100 peaceful worlds in a distant spiral arm. If they were willing to ally with humanity, it would represent a major shift in galactic politics. Schedule a meeting, she ordered, and begin preparations for Operation Starfall. If the Vorthok want to test our resolve, let's make sure we're ready to give them a lesson they won't forget. As she spoke, human ships across the galaxy prepared for the challenges ahead. The species that had once appeared to be isolated and primitive had become the guardians of galactic peace. They had answered the Zelkari ultimatum with defiance, and now they stood ready to defend any world that asked for their protection. The galaxy was entering a new age, and humanity would help guide it toward a better future.